Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We are very pleased to be joined today by Shannon O'Hara, the head of the strategy and coordination for OCHA in Afghanistan. She's on the screen. She's going to appear very soon. She's in Jalalabad, and she will brief you on the humanitarian response to the recent earthquakes in the country. Hi, Shannon. Can you hear us? You can go ahead, please. Hi, colleagues. It seems to be frozen. Can you hear us, Shannon? Can Okay. Let's see if we. It seems that we're sorting it out. Shannon, can you hear us now? Can you? Okay. Seems that we have just to wait a few seconds. They're just restarting the screen. Sorry about that.
Afghanistan and US.
Okay, I think we have you now. You can please go ahead. Thanks so much for joining us here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm speaking to you from Jalalabad in eastern Afghanistan, where it's been 1 week since the 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck this region, followed by a series of aftershocks over the past days, ranging from 5.2 to 5.6 in magnitude. I've been here on the ground for the last 5 days, visiting the most impacted areas and engaging with affected communities, including a trip to the earthquake's epicenter on a UN interagency road mission on Friday. We traveled to the WFP hub that's being established in Mazar-e and Nurgal district of Kunar province to provide key response enablers for scaling up, including an unhoused helicopter to ensure humanitarians and supplies can reach these areas. These areas are some of the most remote rural areas of the country. Even before the earthquake, these villages were difficult to reach. Now, with the earthquake, it takes extraordinary effort to get there. Our trip from Jalalabad of roughly 100 kilometers or 60 miles required more than 6.5 hours. The only road in and out is a narrow single-lane track carved into the mountainside. During our mission, the road was blocked by large rocks from landslides and many vehicles trying to get up and down the valley, including large trucks overloaded with humanitarian assistance rushing to get to the most affected areas. As we drove towards the epicenter, we saw families walking in the opposite direction, displaced, carrying what little they could. Many were still wearing the same clothes from the night of the earthquake. Mothers and fathers were carrying their children, some with fresh bandages covering their injuries. The devastation only got worse as we got closer. Entire villages had been destroyed. Search and rescue operations in the area had been concluded by Friday. However, when we reached Mazar-e, the smell of dead animals from the surrounding villages was overwhelming. We saw families whose lives had been shattered just within a few minutes. The earthquake had destroyed their homes, their farms, and their livelihoods, leaving them with absolutely nothing. The conditions on the ground there are dire. Some families are living in crowded tents, while many are sleeping under the open skies, exposed to rain and cold. There was no clean drinking water and no sanitation. With cholera endemic in the region and initial assessments indicating that 92% of these communities are practicing open defecation, the potential for a cholera outbreak is alarming. Scaling up WASH assistance, including clean water, soap, and latrines, is a top priority to prevent the worst outcomes. Today, I visited 3 IDP sites in Kunar district, meeting with affected communities and spending most of the day speaking with women and girls. Overall, the affected communities are struggling with basic survival. They urgently need water, tents, and food. Women in particular emphasize their need for water and adequate clothing, both for themselves and their children. These communities are devastated. Everyone I spoke with had lost multiple family members. Most of them are deeply traumatized and in need of psychosocial support. We also observed many malnourished mothers and young children. While nutrition screening and treatment services are ongoing in some sites, this needs to be urgently scaled up. In Afghanistan in recent years, women and girls have been pushed to the very margins of society and survival. We know from previous earthquakes and other crises that women and girls always bear the heaviest burden. This is why their needs must be central to our humanitarian response. The teams on the ground have been racing to the affected areas with assistance as fast as the difficult road conditions will allow, and the needs are overwhelming. OCHA is on the ground closely working with all humanitarian partners and engaging with communities to ensure that assistance reaches the most vulnerable, including women and girls. But time is running out. Any day, rainfall could cause flash floods in the valleys where the IDP sites have been established. Additional aftershocks could cause more severe landslides, cutting off access to communities still living near the epicenter. Also, at the end of October, the winter season will begin, and snow will cut off access to these mountain valleys. If we don't act now, these communities may not survive the coming winter. Additional funding is urgently needed. Without immediate support, the weeks ahead risk compounding this tragedy with preventable disease outbreaks, further displacement, and additional loss of life. While additional international support is coming in, flexibility and speed are critical. A response plan is being finalized and will be launched tomorrow to cover immediate life-saving needs. The Emergency Relief Coordinator has already released $5 million from the SURF, and the Afghanistan Humanitarian Fund will complement this with an allocation of another $5 million, but the scale of the devastation demands much, much more. Communities are asking for our collective support, not only to survive today, but to have the strength to rebuild their lives tomorrow. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today, and over to you in New York.
Thank you so much, Shannon O'Hara. Edie, please go ahead.
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. I have a couple of follow-up questions. First, you said that a number of villages have been destroyed. Is there actually any number of how many villages and how many people are displaced? And secondly, can you tell us what kind of cooperation you've gotten from the Taliban in the search and rescue and immediate aftermath issues related to the quake? And thirdly, there have been reports that when the rescue teams came in, that men and some children, males, got rescued and that women and girls got left behind. Can you confirm that that's happened, and has it been reversed by now? Thank you.
Please go ahead, Shannon.
Thank you so much for these questions. In terms of the number of villages that have been destroyed and the number of families that have been displaced, assessments are ongoing. So we've been trying to reach the most affected areas with assessment teams first. That being said, out of the 411 villages that have been affected by the earthquake, we've only been able to assess 49 at this point. Based on initial assessments, though, we can say that, and these numbers are the numbers from the assessment teams, that we have approximately, sorry, I'm getting the latest numbers from the assessment, 5,230 homes are destroyed and 672 are damaged in Laghman province. In, yes, overall, sorry about that. In terms of cooperation with the authorities, humanitarian coordination and partners report an enabling environment that's provided by the de facto authorities without major obstruction of humanitarian operations. The DFA, or the de facto authorities, have mostly led on search and rescue operations and road clearing with heavy machinery. And today, ANDMA, the Afghanistan National Disaster Management Authority, announced an end to its search and rescue operations. In terms of the reports of issues with the search and rescue operations, the women and that I've spoken to in my 5 days here have not reported any incidents to me that they were aware of. So I cannot confirm or deny these reports. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up. You said that 49 villages out of 411 have been assessed. Is the fact that so many have not been assessed a result of the difficulties in getting to them, or are there some other issues?
No, the issue is really the road conditions and the rural and remote locations. So as I mentioned earlier, it took us 6.5 hours to reach one location, which takes an entire team 1 day to get there and get back. So it's really hindering how fast we can assess these areas. And we're trying to increase the number of teams and do so as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Marian. Please go.
Hi, thank you so much for this briefing and the latest updates. This is Mariam Ramadi with Afghanistan International. What is being done for vulnerable groups such as women, children, and disabled who are right now affected in the areas that you described? And also the second question, I know you're facing budget issues and you're asking the member states to give more money to the places that are needed. But how can OCHA reassure these member states that these money will go to the people who are affected and the Taliban are not going to use the aid? Because that happened before, and some states are worried that this money will not, at least all of it will go to the people who are most affected after the earthquake. Thank you.
Thanks so much. In terms of reaching the most vulnerable these families and understanding who are the most vulnerable households, and they prioritize female-headed households, households with members that have a disability, and others that are in urgent need of assistance. So in terms of also we're ensuring that women are represented in health teams, and more women aid workers are supporting distributions along with nutrition, psychosocial, and other counseling services to increase the number of women that are participating in the humanitarian response. However, due to these remote areas and difficult journeys, including journeys by foot, so often teams will have to drive 6 hours and then walk 2 to 3 hours by foot. Fewer women were joining in the initial response efforts, but partners are increasing the number of women staff sent to these affected areas.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Also, my second question, please.
Can you repeat your second?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was asking, how can you ensure that the member states who are sending more money to OCHA or to UN offices in Afghanistan, how can you ensure them that this money will go directly to people who are mostly affected? Also, part of your, another follow-up regarding your response to my first question, today the Taliban didn't even let the UN employees, women employees, to enter UNIMA office in Kabul. In these rural areas, the rules and restrictions are even worse. You said women are mostly, you're trying to get women to distribute the aid and help people. I'm sure there are more restricted areas in terms of women being helped or women helping other people. How are you dealing with that?
In terms of your second question, so the funding that's provided is provided to humanitarian partners, and it goes to the UN and to those partners. It's channeled to them and not to the DFA, to the de facto authorities. In terms of access to women, I've been in the field now for the last 5 days, and I have yet to hear from women that they're not being reached with assistance. These are conservative areas, more conservative, and there are nuances and variations between communities. Some communities are more conservative than others, but women aid workers are able to engage with these communities and understand what their needs are and ensure that assistance is reaching them. Thank you.
Thanks. Pen, and after.
Thank you, Shannon. And you've sort of answered the question, but if I can double down a little on both Edie and Mariam's question. There were reports from the ground that because of the Taliban rules of unrelated men and women weren't being pulled out of the rubble, women weren't being helped. Your answer in many ways is that women are being sent to the front lines to resolve this. What is the workaround that OCHA is doing to make sure women may not be reporting it to you, but it's happening at the rescue sites? What is OCHA doing to be able to resolve that, and how many women are being sent as aid workers? Thanks.
You'll have to forgive me because the connection was bad. I did not hear the first part of your question. If you could repeat it.
It's a similar one to Edie and Mariam, which was follow up on what is OCHA able to do to work around the restrictions of the Taliban on unrelated men and women, and we've seen reports from the ground about women not being pulled out of the rubble because of this. How do you solve it? How many women are being sent in the aid capacity? Thank you.
So we don't have the exact figures. The numbers are constantly changing. And as I noted, we're making concerted efforts to scale up the number of female humanitarian aid workers that are involved in this response. What I can say and what I can speak to is that in every site that I've visited over the last 5 days and in all of my missions, national Afghan women have been present as humanitarian staff and have actively participated and engaged in the response. Thank you.
Abdelhamid, please.
Thank you, Shannon. Abdel. Rescue teams arriving from the neighboring countries like Pakistan, China, maybe Russia, or any other country. And the second, have you noticed any kind of volunteers coming from the Afghani people to help rescue the victims? Thank you.
Thank you. We are not aware of any rescue teams that were sent in from other countries. We are aware of bilateral humanitarian assistance that's been sent from multiple locations, including neighboring countries, to help support these efforts. And yes, to confirm, Afghan local charities are leading on some of this response. They're providing hot meals in IDP sites. They're helping displaced families in local communities, and they're helping to support their neighbors that have been displaced. Yes.
Thanks. I'm just going to move online. If the car, you have a question?
Thank you. My question has been just asked by Abdul Hamid. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have any further questions in the room? No, so I just want to thanks again our guest, Shannon O'Hara. She's the head of strategy and coordination for OCHA in Afghanistan. She was briefing us from Jalalabad. Thank you so much for bringing the updates and for your time today. Thanks. And Stephane is going to brief you shortly. Okay, you're welcome. Thanks so much, Shannon.
Happiest of Mondays, people.
Happy Monday.
Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. I'm warning you. All right, so a couple programming notes for tomorrow. At 10 a.m., tomorrow at 10 a.m., there'll be a briefing here to launch the Secretary General's report entitled Security We Need, Rebalancing Military Spending for a Sustainable and Peaceful Future. That is part of his Pact for the Future report. It's part of the reports mandated by the Pact for the Future. The Secretary General will be here to launch the report. He will deliver remarks. He will not take questions. He will be joined by Izumi Nakamitsu, Under Secretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, as well as Hao Liang-shu, the Acting Administrator for UNDP. They will be delighted to take the questions. Before you ask, we expect the Secretary General to hold his annual pre-GA press conference next week, likely Tuesday at noon, but we'll confirm that. Going back to tomorrow at noon, the incoming President of the General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock, will speak to you at the GA stakeout after her swearing in. I will be back here at the podium after she's done and after you've had all time to meander. 12 tomorrow, and then after she's done and you've meandered back here, we'll have the press briefing. I also wanted to, I've been getting a lot of questions over the weekend, and because of the high volume of misinformation regarding whether a vote had taken place in the General Assembly to move the high-level session of the General Assembly out of New York. And I just want to be clear that there was no such vote in the General Assembly, and I'm not aware of any preparations being made to move the General Assembly high-level session out of New York. Senior personnel appointment. I'm delighted to announce that the Secretary General is appointing Miroslav Jenča of Slovakia as his new special representative for Colombia and head of the UN verification mission. He succeeds, as you know, Carlos Ruiz Massieu of Mexico, who is now in Haiti, leading our mission in Haiti, and to whom the Secretary General is grateful for his dedicated service to the UN in Colombia. Mr. Yencha brings more than 35 years of experience in diplomacy, mediation, leadership, and oversight of UN peace operations, as well as close knowledge of the Colombian peace process and its regional and international implications. As you know, he is currently the Assistant Secretary General for Europe, Central Asia, and the Americas in our Department of Political and Peace Building Affairs, and we congratulate our friend Miroslav on this new appointment and wish him well. Turning to Ukraine, and I have a statement for you. The Secretary General strongly condemns the attacks by the Russian Federation on September 7th, which killed and injured several people, including children. The attack struck a government building in central Kyiv and damaged residential and other civilian infrastructure in the capital and other regions of Ukraine. The targeting of government institutions represents a further escalation in this conflict. Attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure violate international humanitarian law. They are unacceptable and they must end immediately. The Secretary General reiterates his call for a full, immediate, and unconditional ceasefire as a first step towards a just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in Ukraine, one that fully upholds Ukraine's sovereignty, its independence, and territorial integrity in line with the UN Charter, international law, and relevant United Nations resolutions. Just a bit more details from our OCHA colleagues in Ukraine. They said in the capital, Kyiv, one of the victims was an aid worker from a national NGO and a partner of the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund, and as well as her 2-month-old child. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that casualties were also reported in the cities of Zaporizhzhia, Odessa, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Kremenchuk, Kryvyi Rih, and Kherson. Strikes also targeted energy infrastructure, disrupting power and water supplies ahead of the winter season. Repair crews are working to restore services, though temporary outages remain. Meanwhile, support to frontline communities continues. On September 5th, we, along with our partners, delivered aid, including medical kits and hygiene supplies, to some 1,000 people in several villages in the Donetsk region. This was the 10th convoy to that region this year. Turning to the situation in Gaza, hostilities are continuing to kill and injure people over the weekend. In just the past 24 hours, the Ministry of Health in Gaza reported 67 deaths and 320 injuries. This brings the total toll of people killed since the end of the ceasefire in mid-March to almost 12,000. That's what the local health ministry is telling us. We, of course, continue to condemn the killings of civilians. Amid the ongoing offensive in Gaza, the Israeli military has issued more orders over the past days of people to leave specific buildings in areas within Gaza City, warning of imminent attacks. Meanwhile, over the past 2 days, at least one partner organization has been hit in Gaza City, killing several people, including at least one aid worker and one child. Our colleagues reminds us that over 80% of Gaza is either under displacement orders or within militarized areas designated by Israel. With the Israeli military instructing people to move from parts of Gaza City southward, OCHA warns that people are in dire need of food, they're in dire need of water, and they're, of course, in dire need of shelter items. Meanwhile, humanitarians were able to support the entry of a limited number of tents in the past week. Much more is needed to support more than hundreds of thousands of people in all parts of the Gaza Strip, north and south alike, as many are repeatedly displaced. You will have seen that over the weekend, our Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, issued a statement demanding urgent action to halt the spread of famine and suffering in Gaza, warning that there is a narrow window until the end of September to prevent famine from expanding to Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis, and that this window is closing fast. Since the confirmation of famine in Gaza Governorate, the Ministry of Health reports that more than 100 people, a quarter of them children, have died from starvation and malnutrition across the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, in most areas, the Israeli authorities continue to require any movement of humanitarian personnel to be coordinated with them in advance. Yesterday, 11 out of 24 missions requiring coordination were facilitated. That included the collection of fuel from Karim Shalom crossing and the transfer of fuel supplies to the north. 3 missions were denied. Another 4 missions had to be canceled by the organizers. Although the remaining 6 missions were impeded, humanitarians were nevertheless able to distribute water to the north, collect food cargo from Karim Shalom, Karim Abu Salam, a crossing, as well as Zikim. The World Health Organization, for its part, has received more than 570 wheelchairs to distribute to hospitals and partners across the Gaza Strip. Those include 260 wheelchairs specifically designed for children. And earlier today, you saw that we issued a statement in which the Secretary General strongly condemned the terror attack on a bus in Jerusalem, in which at least 6 people were killed and many others injured. He conveys his heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims and wishes a full and speedy recovery to those who were wounded. Turning to Haiti, Tom Fletcher again, our emergency relief coordinator, has arrived in the capital, Port-au-Prince. Mr. Fletcher will meet communities, frontline responders, partners, as well as Haitian authorities. In a social media post, he warned that needs are soaring at a time where funding is at historic lows, stressing that we must try to protect lives and restore hope. You may recall that Haiti's humanitarian appeal has received less than 12% of the needed $908 million to respond to the great needs and just to plainly save lives. This is in a country where almost 6 million people, half of the country's population, are in vital need of aid this year. A similar number of people are facing high levels of food insecurity, while more than 8,400 Haitians are already enduring famine-like conditions. Over 1.3 million people are internally displaced in Haiti, the highest number ever recorded in that country, and that is due to violence and insecurity. Many of those who fled their homes are now living in extremely dire conditions. Turning to the African continent and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where Jean-Pierre Lacroix, our head of peace operations, just concluded a visit to the country. Between the 3rd of September and yesterday, he visited Kinshasa, but also went to the east, to Bunia, Fataki, and Beni. In Kinshasa, Mr. Lacroix met with President Felix Tshisekedi, with the Prime Minister, members of the government, and opposition leaders, conveying the continued commitment to supporting the peace and stability in the DRC from the United Nations. Mr. Lacroix emphasized that hundreds of thousands of Congolese people, including displaced persons, rely on UN peacekeeping mission for daily protection, particularly in the areas of Fataki and Beni in North Kivu, where joint operations with the Congolese armed forces are continuing against local armed groups. He highlighted the importance of international diplomatic efforts, including the Washington-Doha processes, and called for intensified engagement to achieve tangible results, such as a ceasefire and reduce violence. Mr. Lacroix reiterated our readiness to support the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2773. Also cautioned about the severe financial challenges confronting UN peacekeeping, urging member states to contribute the necessary resources to enable peacekeeping mission in the DRC and elsewhere to fulfill their mandates. Turning to Yemen, our colleague Hans Grunberg, our special envoy for Yemen, met today in Saudi Arabia with a number of ambassadors accredited to Yemen, including representatives of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council and other diplomatic missions. In his meetings, he noted with concern that following a new wave of arrests that took place last week, now more than 40 UN personnel are being arbitrarily detained by Ansarallah, as well as expressing concern about the forced entry of UN premises and seizure of UN property by Ansarallah. We strongly condemn these actions and renew our call for the immediate and unconditional release of all personnel arbitrarily detained, including the 23 other UN colleagues held for years, some since 2021, together with personnel from national, international NGOs, civil societies, and various diplomatic missions. Mr. Grunberg also expressed concern about the ongoing hostilities between the Houthi de facto authorities Ansarallah and Israel. He emphasized the need for international and regional unity to prevent further escalation and help advance the peace process in Yemen. And I was asked by some of you for a reaction regarding the missiles launched by the Houthis on Israel. And I can tell you that we know with grave concern the continued Houthi attacks targeting Israel, including a drone attack that reportedly struck Ramon Airport on September 7th. We call for a halt to these attacks. Any additional military escalation could make regional tensions even worse and further destabilize Yemen and the broader region. We emphasize that international law, including international humanitarian law, is applicable, must be respected by all parties at all times. And moving to Sudan, following the landslide that struck the Tarsin village in South Darfur State on 31st August, our relief efforts are ongoing in the area. Today, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that we and our partners have so far assisted at least 1,000 people impacted by this disaster. Between last Thursday and today, an interagency assessment and response mission made up of a dozen of local and international NGOs, UN agencies delivered food and other critical items, as well as healthcare and protection services. At some point this week, our humanitarian colleagues and their partners will discuss the mission's findings, the needs in the areas, and how to scale up the response. Meanwhile, across the country, the current floods are deepening humanitarian needs as thousands of families seek urgent support and shelter. Over the weekend, flooding in Wadi Shahir village in the southeastern state of Gedaref displaced some 2,500 people and destroyed 500 houses. That's what the IOM is telling us. They tell us also that hundreds of others were displaced by flooding last week in parts of Red Sea State, which is obviously in the eastern part of the country, as well as South Darfur in the west. These successive humanitarian crises occur amidst ongoing fighting in Sudan, and I can tell you that we're deeply alarmed by the findings of the independent international fact-finding mission for Sudan released on Friday. The report documents large-scale atrocities committed by both the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese Armed Forces. It points to deliberate attacks on civilians and widespread destruction of critical infrastructure, including hospitals, markets, water systems, and displacement camps. The fighting also underscores the urgent need for accountability and protection of civilians amid the ongoing conflict. Once again, we call for an immediate cessation of hostilities, unimpeded humanitarian access, and steps to ensure the protection of civilians, increase international support to meet soaring needs across the country. Sudan is not the only country being hit by floods. In Pakistan, where our humanitarian colleagues are working hand in hand with the government. Yesterday, Tom Fletcher, our emergency relief coordinator, allocated $5 million from the UN Central Emergency Response Fund to support the response to the floods that continue to hit and devastate many parts of Pakistan. This complements the $600,000 already allocated from Asia Pacific and Regional Fund, as well as the $250,000 allocated from the Pakistan country-based pool fund for local NGOs. The funds will support cash transfers, health, water and sanitation, shelter and food, among other urgent needs. OCHA says that many villages remain submerged, with some reports of water depths up to 10 meters, delaying, obviously, humanitarian access and our ability to assess the situation. The priority needs include sanitation, hygiene, health, shelter, food, and water. Our partners working in health have also expressed concern over a rise in waterborne diseases in many parts. We are working to support the government-led response, and OCHA has deployed staff to affected areas in Punjab to support the coordination efforts. While these new funds will enable life-saving aid, existing resources are nearly exhausted and urgent additional funding is critically needed. Almost done. Wanted to flag a couple of salient points from Volker Turk's presentation of his global update at the opening of the 60th Human Rights 60th session of the Human Rights Council in Geneva. He said that human rights are the solid foundation of flourishing societies. They are a beacon of hope in search for a better world and reject violence, conflict, brutality, and injustice. And yet, disturbing trends that undercut our rights are gaining ground across the world. Pro-war propaganda is everywhere, and the glorification of violence is coupled with a troubling erosion of international law. Around the world, Mr. Turk said the long-established rules of war are being shredded with virtually no accountability. He called for a cross-regional movement to defend the international system and told member states he hopes to work with them on a new initiative to strengthen human rights ecosystems and join the dots between abuses and violations and crisis prevention. I would urge you to read his full remarks. Speaking of reading, today is International Literacy Day. Exactly. You can practice your reading Volker's speech. It is celebrated this year under the theme of promoting literacy in the digital era. In her message for the day, Audrey Azoulay, the Director General of the UN of UNESCO, said that reading and writing alone are no longer sufficient. In this day and age, countries must also integrate media and information literacy into their school curricula, and UNESCO is supporting them in doing that. Lastly, we have a new resident coordinator in Micronesia. Mamadou Kane took office yesterday. Following host government approval. He will also oversee program matters in Kiribati, the Marshall Islands, Nauru, and Palau. He brings over 20 years of experience in development, diplomacy, and international environmental governance, most recently serving executive secretary of the Abidjan Convention. And we congratulate him on that and say welcome. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Two questions. First, on the number of UN personnel being held by the Houthis, it looks like there were still 19 of the latest arrests, and does that mean that the international staffer has still not been released as you hoped?
That is very much correct, unfortunately.
Secondly, the Israeli military has toppled 4 towers in Gaza City in the last 4 days. Does the Secretary General have any comment on that destruction of buildings?
Well, I mean, as I said, we've highlighted the continuing fighting, the continuing destruction in Gaza City, and it is going, I guess, in the direction that is opposite to the one we want to see, and which is a ceasefire, which is humanitarian aid going in, which is hostages being released, and a return to what we had at minimum during the ceasefire. Pam.
Thank you, Steph. On your early clarification of who's coming and who's not on the Palestinian delegation, well, just that it's not.
No, what I was, just to be clear, there were reports over the internet over the last 3 or 4 days. Let me just because this needs to be clear to everyone. There were reports on fake news sites over the internet saying that a vote had taken place in the General Assembly, saying that the session would be moved outside of New York. That is wrong. There was no vote in the General Assembly, to the point where delegations, journalists from serious organizations like yours were calling us to confirm that there'd been a vote. So I just want to be clear, there was no vote. I'm not aware of any plan afoot to move the GA session.
All right. So on that note, thank you for the clarification. The new provisional list is out, and it still has Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, coming on the 25th. Does that indicate that there has been no clarification on his visa to you or the PGA?
There's been no, as far as I know, there's been no change in the visa situation for the Palestinian delegation, despite, I know, our outreach and the outreach of others.
In other words, as far as the UN is concerned, he is coming.
He is listed on the speakers list.
Okay.
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 It is not for me to confirm the travels of any heads of delegations.
Understood. And on that front, if for any reason his visa is granted for the 25th, meaning he would speak at the General Assembly high-level debate, but not at the two-state solution, which has happened in the past, what would your reaction and the Secretariat reaction be?
Well, I'm not going to speculate what our reactions will be. I can tell you that right now, as far as we know, there's no change in the position of the host country, which means there's no change to the fact they've said they would not give him and his delegation a visa. I think we were very clear on expressing our concern about that decision, which we feel goes against the host country treaty. So I'm not going to speculate what may or may not happen. What we would like is for any diplomat, delegations, journalists, people who have business in front of the UN to be granted access to the territory of the United States so they can enter the UN premises as outlined in the host country.
Thank you.
Thing.
Thank you.
Abdelhamid and then Ms. Saloumeh.
Thank you, Steph. I have a few questions. First, I want to correct the number Edie presented in her question. I'm quoting Benjamin Netanyahu. He said, we have destroyed 50 terrorist towers in the last 2 days, and this is just the beginning. I tell the people of Gaza, listen to me carefully. We warned you, leave. Do you have any comment on that?
My comment is the same that we've been given since the beginning of these threats of a complete takeover of Gaza City, is that we stand against any forced displacement of people, that civilians need to be protected, whether they stay or whether they leave. Your next question.
Number of Palestinians were killed today in the West Bank. Even in Jenin, one was killed, and number of Palestinians were injured, and a number of houses were destroyed. Do you condemn that with forcefully the way you condemn the
I haven't seen those reports, but I think we've been, as soon as we will, I think we've been very clear in our condemning attacks on Palestinian civilians in the West Bank.
One more question, if you are patient.
Sometimes I'm not patient with
you. Do you have any comment on the reaction of the people in Venice after they saw that film, the voice of Hind Rajab standing 23 minutes in upload?
I think we have been.
You know Hind Rajab, of course.
Yes, no, I know the case. I think we've spoken out about it. We continue to highlight the horrific situation in Gaza. Ms. Saloumeh, and then Alex.
To be fair, I was going to ask Abdullah Hamid's question about the 50 terror towers. However, yeah. I'm just wondering, to follow up on that, the language that's used in the comments by the Prime Minister, he described these as terrorism nests, and called on the people of Gaza to leave now. You've been warned. What does this...
I think that violent action causes great harm. Violent rhetoric also has a potential to cause great harm. And I would also refer you to Mr. Turk's comments on the situation in Gaza in his remarks. Alex.
Thanks, Steph. I'm wondering if you have any comments on the situation in Nepal.
Yes, we're obviously following the situation with a lot of concern. It's critical that the authorities, the government, protect and respect the rights to peaceful assembly and freedom of expression. I think security forces, as our High Commissioner for Human Rights said, must comply with the basic principles on the use of force. We're obviously very saddened by the loss of life. Nepal enjoys, I think, a very vibrant democracy, an active civic space. And I think it's important that the government and those who are demonstrating meet and try to move on and discuss the issues in a peaceful manner. You may.
Do you have any personnel on the ground?
We have a country team on the ground. I'm not aware of any UN staff being directly impacted by the demonstrations.
Thank you.
All right, any questions online? And I'll come back to the floor. Go ahead.
Yes, this This is Iftikhar speaking.
Yes,
Hello?
yes, go ahead, Iftikhar.
Thank you for the update on the floods in Pakistan. But my question is, you have spoken about the release of report of Secretary General's report on the related to the pact for the future. But what about his report on the work of the organization?
That will be published in due time. I think before I say something, I speak to something I don't know anything about, let me check the facts and get back to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Deji?
Yes, a couple of questions. First, is the Secretary General having anything to say about Israel's strike in Lebanon, especially in the eastern side of Lebanon?
We have. I didn't get any reports from UNIFIL today, but we're obviously
it's
very.
In Bekaa Valley, so
okay,
there's no
I haven't. We're very concerned about any violation of Lebanese sovereignty and anything that could make a regional situation that much more complex.
Last Friday, the Lebanese cabinet just welcomed the plan to disarm militants, including Hezbollah, inside Lebanon. What is the reaction of
we've seen the reports, so obviously the actual plan, as far as we know, has not been made public. What I can tell you is that our colleagues at UNIFIL will continue to cooperate and work closely and support the Lebanese armed forces to extend their authority, to extend their presence in southern Lebanon, to fulfill their obligations under 1701, and we urge all the parties to do the same.
A couple of weeks ago, I think I asked this question. I said there might be a possibility that the United States changed its Department of Defense to Department of War. Now it's a reality. Any comments? Because Mr. Turk just talking about the propaganda and trend of the pro-war, rhetoric.
Mr. Turk is the High Commissioner for Human Rights, whom the Secretary General supports fully, but I have nothing to add to what he's already said. Amélie, and I'll come back for a second round.
You said Tom Fletcher is in Haiti. We haven't seen him for a while. Could he brief us at the end of his trip?
We would love to have him here. And I know Mr. Fletcher would love to come in front of a camera and speak to you. We were trying to do something while he's there, but we may have technical difficulties. But I have no doubt that Mr. Fletcher will make himself available to you as a group. So I have a question on line. I can't really see who it is, but go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Is it my turn?
Yes, please, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, this is Merve Aidogan from Anadolu Agency. Thank you for taking my question. So on Friday, Israel introduced an amendment to change the reference to observer states on a draft resolution regarding the International Day on the Victims of Genocide, which was rejected by majority of countries. My question is, how does the SG view such attempts to amend the language in resolutions on genocide prevention, especially during such sensitive time, especially when it's introduced by a country that is committing genocide? Thank you.
Look, the Secretary, without commenting on what you're implying in the question, I can tell you that the Secretary General and his High Commissioner for Human Rights and his Special Representative on the Prevention of Genocide are all very concerned about the various situations around the world. And I think every member state of this organization has a duty and responsibility to do whatever it can to prevent genocide. Abdelhamid.
Thank you. Can you confirm there is about 400, 500 UN staff in Geneva who signed a letter withdrawing their support of the Secretary General and in protest to the UN 80?
No. I mean, I'm not questioning. I just haven't seen any such letter.
Try to forward it to you.
All
later.
right.
Yeah. One more.
Yes, please go ahead.
The Trump administration is adding more sanctions on the ICC, make it even more difficult for anyone to do work in that independent organization. Do you have any comment?
I think we've spoken extensively about the issues of unilateral sanctions against the ICC, while obviously the International Criminal Court is very much is a separate institution to the Secretariat. For the Secretary General, the ICC is an important, very important component of international law, of various mechanisms for accountability. It should be supported. Its work should be supported and not hindered. Okay, thank you all. It's only Monday.